Next to book reviews and the occasional top 5 list, I felt like starting a new mini-series about one of my favorite video game franchises, Total War. All the games left their own impact on the franchise, and all are more than deserving of a retrospective. I'll be covering the games I've played thus far from Rome to Attila, so I'm sorry Medieval and Shogun diehards, your day is not today. So here you are, a strategy game enthusiast in 2004. The games were, in more ways than one, two-dimensional. You had games like StarCraft and Command & Conquer, where the camera was fixed above you and most of your action was done by clicking. The sprites and landscapes were mostly two-dimensional. Games oftentimes had a well-written but linear story, or was entirely multiplayer-driven. There's nothing wrong with this, of course, but everything always seems so set in stone. There are set enemies and characters, and there's little innovation on the part of the player. The strategies you were allowed to use were already factored in by the developers, making everything feel all limited. The concept of merging strategy and sandbox games was still in its infancy. The early Total War titles got the idea going, but they were still very limited by the technology they had. And then, BAM! What is this? Are those Legionnaires in 3D? How big is this map? Holy crap, that's a big chalumpa of a city. Rome Total War happened. The game was, in light terms, massive. You have these enormous battlefields with huge armies, long, expansive campaigns, and diverse nations and cultures to play as. You had the noble barbarians, innovative Romans, historically incorrect Egyptians. This game really had it all. And nothing was set in stone! Want to play as the Carthaginians and raze Rome to the ground? Be my guest. Want to be British barbarians and conquer Egypt? Go at it. This is Total War. If you're smart enough, you can conquer anything with any faction. There are no good guys. There's no bad guys. It's just you, your allies, and any sorry sap that gets in your way. Have I mentioned that all the battles are in 3D? Don't even get me started on the multiplayer. Up to 8 players duking it out with their armies in a strategic battle royale. This was mind-boggling in 2004. And now, looking back on it from 2015, it's still playable. It's still exciting. It's just aged. Total War has moved on and innovated in a lot of ways since Rome, the same way Rome innovated from its predecessors. Issues and tedious details you don't even think about in newer titles are really pronounced here, like diplomacy. There is no diplomacy in this game. You have to go about this whole building chain to recruit a diplomat, which is already a financial commitment, and then have the diplomat walk like 5 turns to another faction. Then, they present deals that may or may not work. Then, the AI will disregard whatever deals you made and attack you anyway. The whole system's broken. Siege battles are just downright tedious. No matter what strategy you use to get into the city, things always seem to turn into a mosh pit in the town square. And those stupid archery towers. There's so many of them, and you have to capture them one by one, and the arrows do a surprising amount of damage. Graphically, the game looks acceptable. In the chaotic battles, I always know who I'm playing as, and controlling your units is relatively seamless. The problem, aside from the blocky models, is that the units are so colorful, it makes a game like Total War look kind of cartoonish. Pink Parthians, anyone? Faction rosters aren't deep whatsoever, with a lot of factions using just one infantry type to work around. The Romans were OP in multiplayer with their heavy armor and pila, which makes a lot of sense from a historical standpoint, I guess, but it really isn't the best option when it comes to balancing your game. Oh yeah, and how about them elephants? Battles themselves were fast, with units breaking quickly if they were rear charged, and chain routes happening very frequently. There are a lot of great mods which fix a lot of the issues that I've mentioned. Darth mod, for example, slows down the pace of battles extensively, so they generally require more maneuvering and gradual outflanking rather than wild charging, for instance. With age revealing the game's flaws, there are a lot of things that I have to appreciate. Like City View. God, I love City View. It really serves no purpose in the game other than to stare at the cities that you rule. If you build buildings in the city, they actually show up as models in City View, which adds this new sense of accomplishment. The general's speeches before battles were the best the series ever produced. One of my favorite generals always complained that it was his mother's nagging which brought him out on the battlefield, and he just wanted to get it over with. All in all, is Rome Total War a bad game by any stretch of the imagination? Hell no! You could still play it today and have a blast. It's just, my god, it's aged compared to newer titles. Particularly its direct sequel, Rome 2. Although I wouldn't recommend newcomers begin with this game, if you have an old or weak PC, it's not the worst place to start with the franchise. Just keep in mind that things got bigger and better as we moved along.